What's up, guys? A big part of my day as a dealer and collector for sports cards is scrolling on eBay and Facebook looking for new inventory to buy. Now, I can't help but notice that there's a lot of mistakes sellers are making whenever they list their cards, so I've decided to make this video here. This is going to be a comprehensive guide to help you sell your sports cards. Now, if you're a veteran in this space and you feel like you don't need any help, that is perfectly fine, and this video might not be for you. But if you're a beginner or if you're still learning how to sell, then stay right here and I'm going to help you out. This guide is going to be broken up into 4 separate parts: protecting your cards, grading your cards, listing your cards, and then finally packaging and shipping them. If this is your first time on the channel, my name is Taylor and this is Insight Sports. I make videos dealing with the sports card hobby, anything from buying cards, selling cards, collecting, trading. So if you like that kind of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. I'm going to have a lot of new videos coming out soon. Well, it's enough talking for me. Let's get into it. Let's start with protecting your cards. To protect your cards, you're going to need 2 basic supplies. That's going to be sleeves and top loaders. Now, if you have a more valuable card and you think you want to get a little bit more protection for it, you can always use a mag case or a one-touch. But personally, I don't use them often. Most of my cards get put into a sleeve or a top loader and then into a card saver to grade. Whenever you're sleeving your cards, it's very important to be careful and don't go too quick, because you want to watch out for those corners when you're putting the cards into the sleeve. It could easily damage the corners if you go too quick. And one trick that I found for the top loader is to squeeze it on the sides to let the top open just a little bit, and you should be able to have a sliver enough to put your card into that little hole. The same theory applies to this. Be careful with the top loader, because if a corner catches on a top loader and you just keep pushing it, it could easily damage the corners, edges, and knock it from a 10 to a 7. So being careful is key. Back in the day, a lot of collectors used binders and the sleeves inside of the binders. That's not the best method to protect your cards, and I don't advise you to do that with your more valuable cards. If you're collecting a set, putting them in a binder may be an easy way to display them and an easy way to have them all together. But if your goal is to protect the cards, I would go with sleeves and top loaders. Number 2 is going to be grading. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about grading because there are a lot of videos on this platform already that are very informational and go to a lot of detail. So I advise you, if you have questions about grading, to search for grading individually. This is just going to be kind of a basic explanation of why grading is important, what it is, and so on. Grading is just the simple process of examining 4 parts of a card: the centering, the corners, the edges, and the surface. My most important rule for grading is that you don't need to grade every card. I see one of the biggest mistakes collectors make is grading cards that are not worth grading. Before you grade a card, it's really important to look at what a PSA 10 sells for. Look at what the PSA 9 sells for. That will help you better understand the risk involved with paying that grading fee, sending it in, and the difference between a 9 and a 10 could be huge. In a lot of cards, it's bigger than others. If you look and see that a PSA 10 of your card only goes for $20 on eBay, then it's probably not the best idea to send that card into PSA to get graded, because your grading fee is going to outweigh what you're going to sell the card for at the end of the day. Now, don't assume that just because you pulled a card out of a pack and put it directly into a sleeve and top loader that it'll get a PSA 10. Because like I mentioned, one of those 4 is the centering. You can't really change the centering that you get on your card. You could pull a card straight out of the pack and the centering could give you a PSA 8. Even if the corners, edges, and surface are perfect, your centering could be bad enough right out of the pack to knock you down from a 10 to an 8. So don't always assume just because there's no damage on the corners or the edges that it'll get a high grade, because the centering is a big part, especially with PSA and BGS. They have specific rules about centering where cards have to be to get certain grades. With different grades, you'll have different prices, obviously. But some cards, the gaps between the 2 different grades are much larger. For example, a Derek Jeter 1993 SP PSA 10 is anywhere around $150,000, give or take a $10,000, $20,000. But a BGS 9.5, which would be for most cards maybe about half or a little greater than half of the PSA 10 value, those go for around $6 grand. When a PSA 10 of a certain card is very low population, that gap between the 9 and the 10 will be huge. That's really all I have to say about grading. If you have questions about this topic, I can link some videos down below that I found really informational for myself whenever I was learning how to grade cards. Let's get into number 3, listing your cards. I'm going to break this section up into 2 separate parts, listing on eBay and listing on Facebook. The reason I'm doing this is because there's different guidelines you want to follow for each of those different platforms. Let's start with listing your cards on eBay. When you title the card, you should include all important details about the card and make sure that the right words are capitalized. These important details include the year of the set, the name of the set, the player's name. If the card is a parallel, you want to include the parallel name. If it's an autograph, you want to include autograph. If it's a rookie card, rookie, maybe team name. There's a lot of important details, and you want to use up all 80 characters that eBay gives you. Don't make the mistake of putting PSA 10 with a bunch of question marks behind it. If a buyer typed in PSA 10 into the search bar, it means they're looking for a PSA 10. They don't want your raw card that you think might get a chance at a PSA 10. They're looking for a PSA 10. Be a good collector. Be a good member of the hobby. Don't use those keywords that you know will bump your card into everybody's search results, even knowing that your card is not a PSA 10. Your description for the card should be detailed. There's a lot of different options you can choose from in the description itself that eBay gives you, and you should fill in as many as you can with the information you have. Make sure you include the card number, because a lot of collectors look for cards using just the card number and the player's name. If your card has any flaws, like a corner ding or a surface scratch, any flaw at all, make sure you put it in the description, possibly even the title, so that collectors won't be confused. eBay's authentication process is strict, and I've heard of people getting turned down because they didn't fully disclose damage on the card. So it's best to include everything that you can. If it's a graded card and there's a scratch on the slab, it's best to just include it in the description so that way it can't fail authentication later. For raw cards, you need to take as many pictures as possible. Take pictures of the corners, showing the surface. If it's a serial numbered card, I show pictures of the serial number up close. Maybe a picture of the autograph close. For raw cards, I would advise you to have at least 6 pictures of the card on your listing. For graded cards, you really only need a picture of the front and the back if you have good quality photos. If you can't see a serial number from your scan or from your photo, you should probably take another picture of the front or the back, wherever that serial number is, just to show that it's a serial number. And like I said, if you want to show more pictures of the autograph, or if it's a 9 because of a corner issue, maybe show a picture of the corner issue so collectors can see what they're buying. For pricing on eBay, there's 2 options. You can either do an auction or a buy it now. Now for auctions, I would advise starting your auction at 99 cents. I know it might be enticing to start it at $100 if you have a $150 card, but for collectors, that doesn't tend to get good results. I think if people are bidding on it from the very beginning, starting at 99 cents, they're more attached to it and they're more likely to bid it up at the end of the auction. For buy it now, I would look up comps. Basically look at what other cards like yours are selling for. And I would list it for a little bit higher. I find with eBay buy it now, if you put your asking price at a little above comps or best offer, a lot of times people will just buy it. And then the eBay fees will be offset by the gains you had over the comp. And just a quick tip, if you're not sure how to check comps, you could go on eBay, search for a card, and then go to the right sidebar on your phone on the app and scroll down to where you see sold items. And it's little sold items, and then if you click that little circle next to it, that one and the one on top of it, which I believe is completed items, they'll both highlight, and then it'll show you all the items that sold. Now, this is not a foolproof way to find sold cards, because a lot of these you'll see weren't paid or they're relisted later on. So it's not foolproof, but it does give you a quick glimpse into what that card is selling for. For your shipping options, I would choose first class unless it's a high dollar card. My level is always $500 or more. I'm just doing priority. I think it's better for the buyer to have faster shipping. It's more of an incentive to buy from you if they know that they'll get their card quicker. Because if your card is listed at the same price as someone else's, then if you have better shipping or faster shipping, they're more likely to go with you. That's pretty much all I need to mention for eBay. Now let's get into listing your cards on Facebook. The first word I want to mention here is coin. You're going to see it a lot if you're a new collector, and it may be a little confusing to you. All a coin means is whenever you list a card on Facebook, to prove that it's yours and that it's actually in your possession, you would take a index card, piece of paper, maybe even an old card, and write your name and the date, and then put it in the photo with your card. This is just a way to verify that the card is actually yours that you're posting. Now, of course, like anything, people get around this, and there are going to be scammers that use fake coins. They Photoshop a coin into a photo. So be careful of that whenever you're buying. But this video is mainly focused just on selling. The most important advice I can give you for selling on Facebook is to follow your group's rules. A lot of times I see people breaking their rules in their groups by either not putting a price or price bashing. Like my mom always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. If you see a card that's a $200 card and somebody lists it for $1,200, you're not going to buy it. So there's no point in commenting, telling him what an idiot he was for posting that card for such a high price. Just keep scrolling. There's really no point in wasting your time or his time to argue. If the group has a rule to list cards with a price, make sure you do this. And you can use the method from earlier about going on eBay and looking for the recently sold items. And that's how you can get your price. And then I would use the same thing as eBay Buy It Now, where I would put the price a little bit higher than recent comps. That way if somebody offers you a little bit less, you can kind of compromise and meet somewhere in the middle. Let's get into the last section of this guide, and that's going to be packaging and shipping your cards out. Congrats, you finally made a sale. Now it's time to ship it out to your buyer as quick as possible so they can get their card in their hands. There's 4 supplies that I think are important when shipping your cards. That's going to be a bubble mailer, packing tape, painter's tape, and cardboard. If you sell a higher dollar card, it's probably a good idea to put the card in a box to ship it instead of a bubble mailer, or just put it into a bubble mailer first and then put the bubble mailer into a box and just protect it that way. But for the most part, bubble mailers are the way to go. Before you put the card into a bubble mailer, especially if it's a raw card, it's important to tape cardboard around the card. This will protect the card during shipping, because I know that packages get run through machines and it happens too often where bubble mailers are just completely torn apart by the machine and your little top loader doesn't stand a chance. So what a lot of people do is they'll take pieces of cardboard, you can cut it from another box and tape it with painter's tape around the card. So that way when it goes through that machine, it has an extra layer of protection. You can put the cardboard with the card in between, directly into your bubble mailer. I like to fold mine up to give it like another solid layer, and then I put my label right on top and it's good to go. When buying your labels, you can either go to the post office and get your labels there, or if you sold it on eBay, you could print labels directly from eBay and you'll save a couple bucks. So if you sell on eBay, I advise you to do that, but if not, it's not that big of a deal to just pay for shipping at the post office or UPS. Well guys, I hope this video helps you sell your cards online, and if you have any other questions, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. I'm going to be reading everyone's comment. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and if you like this kind of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. I'm going to be making weekly videos dealing with everything in the sports card hobby, so come along with me for the journey. That's all for tonight. I'll see you next time.